50 years, it feels like a lifetime, but sometimes it feels like it was just yesterday. The world has changed, and yet some memories refuse to fade. There was a time when I believed in promises, when I believed that love could withstand any challenge. I sit here, my hands trembling as I hold a letter in my hands, one of the many he wrote to me, sealed with a promise that never came true. Jack and I, his name still tastes sweet on my lips, met one summer when the world felt alive, and everything seemed possible. We were both young, wide-eyed, and ready to take on the world, but little did I know that this summer would change everything. He was more than just a boy I met at summer camp, he was my everything. The way he smiled at me, the way he looked into my eyes as though no one else existed, it was magical. We made a pact that summer, one that seemed foolish but felt so important at the time. "We'll write to each other," he said, his voice full of excitement. "No matter where life takes us, we'll always have each other." We wrote letter after letter, each one filled with dreams and promises, but it was the last one that would stay with me forever. He told me he'd come back. "I'll come back for you, Emma," he promised, his voice unwavering, a commitment I never questioned. And I didn't, not even when the years began to pass, not even when the world around us changed. For a while, the letters kept coming, and with every word, my heart swelled with hope. But then, one day, the letters stopped. Just like that. I waited, believing that it was only temporary, that Jack would return. But the days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. He never came. I sat by my window every day, watching the horizon, waiting for a figure to appear on the edge of the street, but the only thing I saw was the harsh reality of a world that had moved on while I remained stuck in time. Life didn't wait for me, and neither did love. I tried to move on, to fill the hole Jack left in my heart, but there was always this lingering emptiness, a whisper in the back of my mind that perhaps, just perhaps, he was out there, waiting to come back. I never stopped writing to him. Every year, on the anniversary of that summer, I would send a letter, hoping that somehow, somewhere, it would reach him. But as the years went by, I stopped hoping. It wasn't because I didn't love him anymore, it was because the weight of his absence had become too heavy to bear. He was just gone, a memory locked away in the past. And yet, today, something changed. My heart skipped a beat as I heard the doorbell ring, just once, faintly, but enough to make me pause. I never expected anyone. As I walked toward the door, I felt a mix of dread and excitement, the kind you feel when you're not sure whether you should welcome what's on the other side or run away. I opened the door slowly, and there, on the doorstep, was a letter. It wasn't like any other letter I'd received before. The handwriting was familiar, but it wasn't his. My heart began to race as I hesitated for just a moment, holding the envelope in my hands, feeling the weight of it as if it were a piece of the past itself, come to find me. I looked around, expecting to see someone standing there, but there was no one, just the letter, lying on the ground in front of me, waiting to be opened. It was as though time itself had decided to give me another chance, another opportunity to face the past, to confront what I'd spent so many years trying to forget. I bent down, picked up the letter, and stared at it for a long moment. My hands shook, my mind racing with a million questions, none of them having answers. Why now? After all this time? Was this the moment I had been waiting for all these years? With trembling hands, I tore open the envelope, feeling my heart beat louder with every second that passed. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper, neatly folded, the words scrawled in ink that looked oddly familiar but not quite right. The message inside wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a simple apology, nor was it an explanation of where Jack had gone. Instead, it was something else entirely. A truth that had been hidden for decades. And as I read the letter, my world began to crumble. The words on that paper held secrets I could never have imagined. There were truths buried deep beneath the surface of our love that had remained hidden, locked away in silence for far too long. And now, with one letter, everything was about to change. My mind raced, unable to process the flood of emotions and memories that crashed over me. How could this be? Was Jack's promise broken forever, or was there something more to the story? The questions were endless, but one thing was certain: the answers were within reach, and I had to know the truth. There was no turning back now. This was the moment I had waited for, the moment when the past would finally meet the present, and everything would come to light. I couldn't stop myself from reading the letter again, each word sinking deeper into my soul, unraveling the truth that had been hidden for so long. And as the truth unfolded before me, I realized that some promises, even the ones made in love, are never as simple as they seem. Jack's promise wasn't the end of the story, it was just the beginning. As the letter burned in my hands, my heart raced. The room seemed to close in around me, the air thick with the weight of what I had just read. There was no denying it. Jack had never truly left, at least not in the way I had believed. The words on the paper revealed a truth far darker than I ever could have imagined. As I reread the letter for the third time, it became clear: Jack hadn't disappeared because he no longer cared for me. No, he had disappeared because he had been forced to. Forced by circumstances beyond his control, by a secret he had sworn to keep buried for all these years. And now, I had to face it: this secret was the very reason why our love had been torn apart in the first place. My hands were trembling, my breath shallow, as I tried to process the words on the page. The letter was short, but every sentence carried the weight of a lifetime. It began with an apology, one I didn't understand at first. "I'm sorry, Emma. I never wanted you to find out this way, but the time has come for you to know the truth. The truth about what happened that summer, and why I had to leave you behind." My heart skipped a beat. I had always known Jack as a man of integrity, someone who would never lie, never betray. So why had he kept this from me? The letter went on to explain that Jack hadn't been a simple summer camp counselor, but rather someone deeply entangled in a dangerous web of deception. He had been part of something far larger than himself, something that had forced him to sever all ties with the people he loved, including me. "I never wanted to hurt you, Emma," the letter continued, "but I was caught in a situation I couldn't control. It was a matter of life and death, and I made the hardest decision of my life, leaving you behind. It wasn't just for my safety, but for yours too. I couldn't risk putting you in danger." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Jack had been involved in something dangerous, something that threatened not just his life, but mine as well. I couldn't imagine what kind of world Jack had been living in, a world where love was so easily sacrificed for the sake of survival. But even with that knowledge, the pain of being abandoned still stung. He had chosen to protect me, but at what cost? All these years, I had thought that he had simply forgotten me. But it turned out that he had never stopped thinking about me, even if he couldn't reach out. I put the letter down for a moment, trying to collect myself. The emotions flooding through me were overwhelming. A part of me wanted to be angry, to scream at the injustice of it all, but there was something else too, something more powerful. It was relief. Relief that Jack had never wanted to leave me, relief that he had been forced into this. My mind was still reeling from the weight of the revelation when I noticed something else in the letter, a small, folded piece of paper. It was an address, a place I had never heard of before. Jack had written it hastily, as though he knew he didn't have much time. "This is where I am now. This is where I need you to come if you ever want to understand. But be careful, Emma. There are things you don't know, things I can't explain over paper. Please come, but only if you are ready to face the truth. And be prepared to make a choice, one that could change everything." The words were simple, but the implications were profound. What did Jack mean by "make a choice"? What was waiting for me at this mysterious location? I didn't know if I was ready to face whatever lay ahead, but I knew one thing for sure: I had to go. This was my chance to finally understand the truth, to understand why he left, and why we could never be together in the way we had dreamed. But as I stood there, holding the letter in my hands, a sense of dread settled in. What if I was making a mistake? What if the truth was too much for me to bear? I couldn't turn back now. The past had a way of creeping up on you, and there was no escaping it. I folded the letter carefully, tucking it into my pocket, and grabbed my coat. The address Jack had given me wasn't far, it was only a few miles away. But the journey felt like a lifetime. As I stepped out into the cold night, the streets seemed quieter than usual. The wind rustled the trees, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow on everything around me. I had never been so uncertain in my life. But with every step I took, my determination grew stronger. I had to know what Jack had been hiding. I had to know if the love we had shared was truly gone or if it had been buried beneath the surface all this time. The drive was long, and the silence in the car was deafening. Every thought I had was consumed by the mystery, by the questions swirling in my mind. What had Jack been involved in? What kind of danger had he faced? And what kind of choice did I have to make? The further I drove, the more I felt like I was heading towards something I couldn't escape. A part of me was terrified, but another part of me was hopeful. Hopeful that this journey would give me the answers I had been searching for all these years. As I pulled up to the address Jack had given me, I took a deep breath and stared at the building in front of me. It was an old, run-down warehouse, far from the place I had expected to find Jack. The door creaked as I pushed it open, the air inside thick with dust and shadows. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped inside, the door slamming shut behind me with an echo that seemed to shake the very foundation of the building. And then, I saw him. I could hardly believe my eyes. There, standing in the shadows of the warehouse, was Jack. It was him, but not the way I remembered. His hair was longer, his face more gaunt, as though the years had taken their toll on him in ways I couldn't understand. The man standing before me was a stranger, but at the same time, he was the man I had loved so deeply. The one I had spent countless nights dreaming about. His eyes, however, were unmistakable, still the same deep blue that I had once gotten lost in. "Emma," he said, his voice strained, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of all the years that had passed. The room seemed to close in around me. My heart was racing, my breath shallow. I wanted to run to him, to throw myself into his arms and forget everything. But something inside me held me back. This was no fairy tale. This was real. And whatever had happened between us was far from simple. "I never thought you'd come," Jack continued, stepping closer. "But I'm glad you did. You need to understand everything, before it's too late." Too late? What was he talking about? The words made my chest tighten, a chill running down my spine. My instinct screamed at me to turn around and leave, but my feet were rooted to the ground. I had to know what was going on. "Jack, what is this? What's going on? Why did you leave me all those years ago? What did you get yourself into?" My voice trembled, but I couldn't stop it. My emotions were raw, and the questions I had buried so deep were now flooding to the surface. Jack's face darkened. He looked away, as though the truth was too painful to confront. "I didn't have a choice, Emma. None of us did." I stepped forward, desperate for answers. "You could have told me. You could have trusted me." He ran a hand through his hair, the stress clearly etched into every line of his face. "I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I couldn't drag you into this. You wouldn't have survived it." "Survived what?" I demanded, my voice rising. "What is this? What are you involved in?" Jack hesitated, his gaze flickering to the shadows around us. "There's a group, an organization. They've been watching us, controlling everything from the shadows. It's bigger than you can imagine, Emma. And it's been chasing me for years. That's why I had to leave. I wasn't safe. You weren't safe. The words didn't make sense at first. My mind couldn't piece them together. An organization? Watching us? What had he gotten himself into? And why was he still running? I know this is a lot to take in, Jack continued, his voice softer now. But there are people out there who will stop at nothing to make sure this stays buried. And I can't let you be a part of it. I can't let you be in danger. My head was spinning. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of confusion and fear. The man I once knew, the man I had loved, was telling me things that I didn't know how to comprehend. But then something Jack said struck me like a bolt of lightning. I can't let you be in danger. That was it. The real reason he left. He had been protecting me. But why didn't he tell me? Why didn't he trust me enough to let me in? The pain of his absence, the years of wondering and grieving, suddenly felt even heavier. So, what now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What do we do? You're telling me all this, but what does it mean for us? Jack's face hardened again. It means that we can never go back to the way things were. There are too many people involved now, Emma. Too many dangers. You need to understand this. You can't be a part of my life anymore. His words cut through me like a knife. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. So, that's it? You're just going to walk away again? After everything? After everything we had? I never wanted to walk away, Jack said, his voice cracking. But you have to understand, this is bigger than us. You have to trust me on this. I took a step back, my mind racing. The anger I had been holding back for all these years finally bubbled to the surface. How could you ask me to trust you when you've been lying to me for so long? How could you leave me in the dark like this? You didn't even give me a choice. Jack's eyes filled with regret, but it wasn't enough. I never wanted to hurt you. You have to know that. But I was trying to protect you. I always was. I turned away, unable to look at him anymore. I needed space, I needed to think, but the truth was, I didn't know what to think anymore. I had been living a lie, and the reality of it all was suffocating me. I didn't know who Jack really was anymore. He was a stranger who claimed to love me, but had kept secrets so deep they could destroy everything. I have to leave, I said, my voice hollow. I can't do this right now. But as I turned to walk away, I heard Jack's voice one last time, pleading with me. Emma, please. Don't go. If you leave now, you'll never understand. This could be your last chance. I froze. The words echoed in my mind, twisting and turning like a knot that couldn't be undone. My heart was screaming for him, but my mind was filled with doubts and fears. What if he was right? What if I walked away and never got the answers I needed? But what if staying meant risking everything? My entire life was hanging in the balance, and I had no idea which choice would save me, and which would destroy me. I stood there, caught between two worlds. The past I thought I understood, the love I thought was still alive, and the dangerous unknown Jack had dragged me into. My mind was a whirlwind of questions, doubts, and fears. Each heartbeat seemed louder than the last, and the silence between Jack and me felt like an impenetrable wall. I had to leave. It was the only way to keep myself safe, to preserve what little peace I had left. But the pull of Jack, the man who had once been my everything, was stronger than any rational thought. His voice, filled with desperation, was still echoing in my ears. Please, Emma, Jack's voice reached me again, but it was different now. The hardness, the urgency was gone. Instead, there was raw vulnerability. I never wanted this for you. I wanted you to live a life free of all this. A life that was ours. But how could I trust him? He had kept so many secrets. I didn't even know who he was anymore, what kind of danger he was wrapped up in. How could I risk everything I had for him when I didn't even know if he was telling the truth? I looked back at him, our eyes locking for a moment. It wasn't just the memories of our love that kept me here, it was something deeper. Something unspoken, something in the way he looked at me, the way his entire being seemed to beg for understanding. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore, Jack," I whispered, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to stay strong. "You've kept so much from me. You left me without a word, and now you're asking me to walk back into a life that I don't even recognize." Jack stepped forward, his hands outstretched, as though trying to bridge the chasm between us. "I never wanted to hurt you. But sometimes, we have to make choices that aren't easy. I never wanted to leave you, but I did it to keep you safe." His words hung in the air like a heavy fog, and I couldn't breathe. How could I make sense of everything he was saying? Was it all just an excuse to justify abandoning me all those years ago? Or was there more to the story than I could understand? "I know you think I betrayed you," Jack continued, his voice low and full of pain. "But I did what I had to do. There were people involved in things far bigger than us. Things that could destroy us both. I thought that if I disappeared, you'd be free from them. But now they're coming after me, Emma. And they'll stop at nothing to make sure this stays buried." His words sent a chill down my spine. The weight of his confession was more than I could bear. If what he was saying was true, then the danger wasn't just something he had escaped from, it was something that was now chasing both of us. The past I had tried so hard to move on from was crashing back into my life, bringing with it an unstoppable force. "I don't understand," I said, shaking my head. "What are they after? What do they want from us?" Jack looked around again, his gaze flickering to the shadows, as though expecting someone to leap out at us from the darkness. "They want control. They want everything. They'll use anyone they can to get it. I thought I could fight them off, but they're too powerful. You don't know what they're capable of, Emma." I took a step back, the weight of his words pressing on me like a vice. "So what now? What do we do? How do we stop them?" Jack's expression hardened. "We can't. Not alone. But together we stand a chance. If we're careful, if we trust each other, we can find a way to fight back. But it means being in this fight until the very end. It means never looking back, never running away. If we're going to do this, it has to be all or nothing." The truth settled in my chest like a stone. The choice before me wasn't just about Jack anymore. It was about survival, about fighting for something that had been lost for so long. I had already given up so much. Could I really turn my back on the one person who had meant everything to me? But could I trust him? Could I trust him enough to risk my life once again? The silence between us stretched on, each second heavier than the last. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I felt trapped, caught between my past and my future, between the love I had once known and the life that Jack was offering me. A life filled with danger, uncertainty, and pain. "Emma, please," Jack whispered, his voice breaking. "You can't walk away from this. Not now. Not after everything. You have to know that whatever happens, we're in this together. You're not alone anymore." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I fought them back. I didn't know what to do. Every fiber of my being wanted to believe him, to trust that this was real, that we could make it out of this alive. But the reality was too overwhelming, too much for me to fully understand. I didn't have all the answers, and I wasn't sure I ever would. But in that moment, I made a choice. A choice to face the unknown, to step into the danger with Jack. To stop running from the ghosts of the past and face whatever came next. "I'm with you," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "But we do this together. No more secrets. No more lies. We fight this, or we die trying." Jack's eyes softened, a flash of relief crossing his face. He nodded, his lips curling into a small, pained smile. Together. And just like that, our fates were sealed. The past had caught up with us, and the only way out was through the storm that was about to consume us both. The decision was made. I could feel the weight of it in every inch of my body. There was no turning back now. The past that had been haunting me was no longer a distant memory. It was alive, breathing, and waiting for me to face it head-on. Jack's hand brushed against mine as he stepped closer, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my heart race. "You know what this means, right?" he asked, his voice low and steady. "Once we go down this path, there's no going back. You'll be a target. We both will." I nodded, though the knot in my stomach tightened. "I know. But I can't just walk away. Not now. Not after everything you've said." We stood there for a moment, neither of us saying a word, both lost in our thoughts. The quiet of the night around us was eerily still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I had always prided myself on my ability to stay calm under pressure, but this was different. I didn't know what I was stepping into, what dangers lurked ahead. And yet, I felt a strange comfort in the fact that I wasn't alone. Jack had always been my protector, even when I didn't know it. Now, it was my turn to protect him. And I wasn't sure I was ready for it. "We need to move fast," Jack said, snapping me out of my thoughts. His voice was urgent now, his hand gripping mine tighter. "They'll know we're together soon enough. They always do." I didn't need to ask who they were. I had a sinking feeling in my gut that the people Jack had been running from were far worse than anything I could imagine. And now, they were coming for both of us. "Where do we go?" I asked, my voice steady but betraying the fear that was creeping in. "How do we even begin to fight these people?" Jack paused for a moment, his gaze distant, as if searching for the right words. "We don't fight them directly, not yet. We have to find out everything we can about them first. The more we know, the better chance we have of taking them down." "But what if they find us first?" I asked, a wave of panic rising in my chest. "We'll be ready," Jack said, his confidence almost comforting, despite the terror that I could feel in his bones. "We have to be. And we'll do it together." His words made me feel like I could face anything, but deep down, I was terrified. Terrified of what was waiting for us, terrified of losing him again. The thought of losing him, of losing everything, was too much to bear. "Okay," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "What do we do now?" "We run. We hide. And we figure out the rest as we go," Jack replied, his eyes steely with determination. "Stay close, Emma. We can't afford to lose each other now." The decision was made, and with that, we turned and walked into the darkness together. Every step felt heavier than the last, each one pulling me deeper into the unknown. But it didn't matter. We had made our choice. And now, we had to see it through, no matter where it took us. As we moved through the quiet streets, the shadows seemed to close in around us, watching, waiting. I could feel eyes on us, though no one was there. The feeling of being hunted, of being prey, was unsettling. But Jack was right. We had to keep moving. We reached a small alleyway, where Jack paused, pulling me into the shadows. I had no idea where we were or how we were going to get out of this alive, but I trusted him. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was doing something that mattered. Jack's grip on my hand tightened. "We don't know how long we have before they come for us. But we'll keep running. And we'll fight when the time comes." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. The fear was overwhelming, but there was something else too, a sense of purpose, a feeling that for the first time in a long while, I was doing something that mattered. And I wasn't alone. As we continued through the alley, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I turned around, half expecting to see someone standing there, but the alley was empty. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible in the stillness. Jack froze, his head snapping toward the sound. "We're not alone," he said, his voice low and tense. My heart skipped a beat. Every instinct told me to run, to get out of there as fast as possible, but Jack pulled me closer. "Stay with me, Emma," he whispered urgently. "We need to stay calm. Trust me. Don't panic." I didn't know what was happening, but I could see the determination in Jack's eyes. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was something bigger. Something that neither of us fully understood yet. And then, in the distance, I saw them. Figures moving in the shadows, closing in on us. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as the reality of our situation hit me like a punch to the gut. There was no escape. "We're too late," I murmured, fear creeping into my voice. "No," Jack replied, his voice firm and resolute. "We're not. We're not giving up now. Not after everything we've been through." With that, he pulled me into a nearby doorway, ducking down as the figures passed by. My breath caught in my throat, my heart hammering in my chest. It was only the beginning. But whatever happened next, I knew one thing for sure: Jack and I were in this together. And we were going to fight until the very end. We waited in silence, barely breathing, as the shadows moved past us. The figures, whoever they were, seemed to know exactly where they were going, their footsteps heavy and deliberate. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could hear Jack's breath, shallow but controlled, beside me. Every second felt like an eternity, and the sound of the footsteps echoed in my mind, growing louder and louder. I was sure they'd spot us. They had to. But they didn't. The figures passed by without a glance, their movements eerie in their precision. I swallowed hard, trying to make sense of everything that had happened, of everything that was happening now. "What do we do?" I whispered, my voice barely above a breath, the fear making it tremble. Jack didn't reply at first. His eyes were scanning the street, watching, calculating. "We wait. They'll be gone soon. If we move now, they'll hear us." I nodded, my fingers tightening around his. I didn't know how much longer I could stay like this. My legs were starting to ache from crouching, and my nerves were shot. The tension was unbearable, but Jack was right. Moving too soon could get us both caught. And then, just as I thought the danger had passed, one of the figures stopped. My stomach dropped. They were turning back. "Stay down," Jack whispered urgently. "They've sensed something." I barely had time to process his words before the figure began walking in our direction. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. This was how it ended. But then, as if in some twisted twist of fate, the figure stopped right in front of our hiding spot. I could feel the heat of their body close to mine, but they didn't notice us. It was as though they were searching for something, someone, but not us. The sound of their breathing was steady, their movements deliberate. I held my breath, my mind racing. Who were these people? What did they want? And why were they after Jack? The figure shifted slightly, taking a step closer to where we were hidden, and I felt my body tense in response. But just as the figure moved closer, the sound of footsteps echoed from the other direction, pulling their attention away from us. "Go," Jack whispered, his voice strained. "This is our chance." Before I could respond, Jack grabbed my hand and pulled me to my feet, guiding me swiftly toward the alley's exit. I didn't question him. I just ran, my feet barely touching the ground. Every fiber of my being screamed for us to run faster, to get as far away as possible. I didn't know where we were going or what we were doing, but I trusted Jack. I had no other choice. We rounded a corner, disappearing into another dark street, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still being watched. The adrenaline was coursing through my veins, and my heart was racing so fast I could barely keep up with the pounding in my chest. "This way," Jack said, pulling me down another side street. The buildings loomed around us, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out like claws. "Where are we going?" I asked, breathless, trying to keep up with his pace. "To the safe house," Jack replied, his voice filled with urgency. "We'll figure it out there. We just need to get away from them." Safe house? The words barely registered. All I knew was that I had to trust Jack, that whatever was coming next, we'd face it together. We moved faster, but the weight of our situation began to settle in. The safe house was only a few blocks away, but the feeling of being pursued never left me. I could hear distant footsteps behind us, but I didn't dare look back. Every step we took felt heavier, as if the world was closing in on us. And then, just as we reached the edge of the street, a figure appeared in front of us, blocking our path. I froze. There was no way around them, no way to escape. "Jack!" I gasped, pulling back as the figure stepped closer. They were dressed in dark clothing, their face obscured by a mask. My heart skipped a beat. These weren't just some random people after us. These were the people who had been hunting Jack for years. "We're trapped," I said, my voice shaking. "What do we do?" Jack's expression didn't falter. He stepped in front of me, putting himself between me and the masked figure. "Stay behind me. Don't move. Do you understand?" I nodded, though my legs felt like they were made of stone. The figure stepped forward, and I could hear the low hum of something mechanical, something dangerous, clicking into place. The figure reached up, pulling off their mask, revealing a face I'd never seen before. "You're in the wrong place, Jack," the figure said, their voice smooth, cold, like ice. "You and your little friend here are going to come with us. Now." "No," Jack said, his voice low but steady. "You're not taking us." The figure chuckled, a sound that made my skin crawl. "You don't have a choice in the matter, Jack. You should have known that by now." I felt the air shift, the tension building like a storm, and then, everything went dark. The air around us felt thick with tension, like a storm cloud ready to burst. I could hear the faint hum of something in the distance, but I couldn't focus on it. My entire world had narrowed to the figure in front of us, whose cold, calculating eyes seemed to pierce through me. My body was frozen, my mind racing, trying to think of a way out, but everything felt hopeless. Jack's hand tightened around mine, his grip firm despite the situation. I could feel the fear in him, but there was something else, something unyielding. He wasn't going down without a fight. And in that moment, I realized I couldn't either. "We don't have to do this," Jack said, his voice low, controlled, but carrying an edge of authority that made the figure hesitate for just a moment. "You don't know who you're dealing with." The masked figure tilted their head, almost as if considering Jack's words. For a split second, I thought we might actually get out of this. But then the figure's lips curled into a smile, one that didn't reach their eyes. "You think I don't know exactly who I'm dealing with?" The figure's voice was filled with disdain. "You're Jack Carter. You've caused enough trouble to last a lifetime. And now, you're going to pay for it." Jack's face remained stoic, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his body was coiled, ready to spring into action. He wasn't about to let us be taken, not without a fight. Suddenly, the figure raised their hand, and from behind them, two more figures emerged from the shadows, weapons drawn. I felt my stomach drop. We were outnumbered and outgunned, and there was nowhere to run. "We've been tracking you for months," the first figure continued, their voice dripping with venom. "You think you can escape us? You think you can hide?" Jack didn't answer. He wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. Instead, he took a step forward, his stance defensive, eyes scanning the area around us, looking for any opening, any chance to get away. "I'm not going anywhere with you," Jack said, his voice steady but tinged with resolve. "Not today. Not ever." The figure scoffed, and in a swift motion, they gestured for their companions to move closer. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it. But I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, every muscle in my body locked in place, as I waited for whatever was coming next. Then, just as I thought the situation was about to spiral out of control, a distant sound interrupted the standoff. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, like the roar of an engine. The figure froze for a moment, their eyes flicking to the source of the noise. "What is that?" the figure muttered, but before anyone could answer, the sound grew deafening. A vehicle, approaching fast, the unmistakable sound of tires screeching on asphalt. Without warning, the figure turned to their companions. "Move! Now!" The three of them turned and began to sprint down the street, disappearing into the shadows as quickly as they had appeared. I stood frozen, still trying to process what had just happened. Why had they left so abruptly? Who had scared them off? Jack grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the alley. "Come on. Now's our chance." We didn't hesitate. We ran as fast as we could, turning corners, dodging obstacles, until we reached the safety of a narrow side street, away from the danger. My lungs were burning, and my legs felt like jelly, but I didn't care. We were alive. And for now, that was enough. We stopped for a moment to catch our breath, our chests heaving as we tried to steady ourselves. But I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the danger wasn't over. That the figures were still out there, watching, waiting. "What just happened?" I finally asked, my voice shaky. Jack's face was grim. "I don't know. But I have a feeling this is far from over. Whoever they are, they won't stop until they have me." "But why? What do they want from you?" Jack looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of regret and something else, something deeper. "It's not just about me. It's about everything I've been involved in. There's a bigger game at play here, Emma. And I've been a part of it longer than you know." I frowned, confused. "A bigger game? What do you mean?" Before Jack could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed behind us. My heart skipped a beat. We weren't alone. The footsteps grew louder, echoing off the narrow alley walls as we froze, our bodies tense, our breaths shallow. I turned to Jack, searching his face for some sign, some plan to get us out of this mess. But his expression was unreadable. He was calculating, always thinking a few steps ahead, but even he knew we were running out of time. "We need to go. Now," he said, his voice low but urgent. Without waiting for a response, he grabbed my hand, pulling me towards the nearest door, a rusted metal gate that looked like it hadn't been opened in years. I didn't question him, I just followed, my heart racing. The footsteps were closer now, too close for comfort. Whoever they weren't far behind, and they weren't planning on letting us escape. Jack yanked the door open with surprising strength, and we slipped inside. The musty air hit me immediately, stale, damp, the kind of place you never wanted to end up. But it was better than being out there with the unknown threat closing in. The door slammed shut behind us with a loud clatter, and we both froze, listening intently. The sound of footsteps stopped, and for a moment, there was silence. I held my breath, praying they hadn't heard the door. But then, a low voice echoed from the other side. "Don't let them get away. They can't hide forever." I shuddered at the coldness of the voice, the unmistakable malice that seemed to seep through the walls. Whoever these people were, they weren't playing games. They weren't just chasing us, they were hunting us. Jack's grip on my hand tightened, and without another word, we moved deeper into the building. The floors creaked underfoot, the air growing thicker with each step we took. The place seemed abandoned, but there was something unsettling about it, something wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't the only ones here. "We need to get out of the city," Jack said, his voice strained. "But I can't take you somewhere safe until I know who's pulling the strings. We need answers." I nodded, but a sense of dread settled in my stomach. Who could possibly be after Jack? And why? We had no answers, only more questions. We moved through the building, trying to stay as quiet as possible. Jack led the way, his eyes constantly scanning the surroundings, alert to every sound. I couldn't help but feel the weight of the silence pressing in on me, the suffocating sense that we were being watched. Every shadow seemed to hide something, every creak of the floor sounded like footsteps drawing closer. Then, we reached the back of the building, another door, this one even older and more worn than the last. Jack tried the handle, but it was locked. He cursed under his breath, his eyes darting around, searching for something, anything, that could help us escape. I pulled at his arm. "Jack, what are we going to do?" He didn't respond at first. His mind was working, calculating options faster than I could follow. Then, his gaze landed on a window, a small, grimy pane of glass high up on the wall. It was the only possible way out, but it would mean climbing, and the height was considerable. "We're taking the window," Jack said, determination in his voice. "But we need to move fast. They're close." I nodded, my heart in my throat as I tried to steady myself. We had no choice. It was our only chance. Jack hoisted me up first, his hands steady as he helped me grab hold of the ledge. I managed to get my feet under me, and then, with his help, I pulled myself through the window, my hands scraping against the rough edges of the glass. Once I was outside, I turned to see Jack climbing up after me, his movements swift and practiced. We had made it out, but the danger wasn't over. From the street below, I could see shadows moving, figures darting between buildings. They were still out there, and now, they were hunting us in earnest. Jack helped me down from the ledge, and we landed in the alley below with barely a sound. We crouched low, our backs pressed against the cool stone of the building as we tried to catch our breath. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel the sweat on my brow. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, and the weight of what we just escaped began to settle in. "We need to keep moving," Jack whispered, his eyes scanning the alley for any sign of danger. "They'll be looking for us now. And they won't stop until they find us." "But where can we go?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We can't keep running forever." Jack's eyes flickered to mine, and for a moment, I saw something in them, something I hadn't seen before. There was fear there. Fear for me, fear for what was to come. He didn't have all the answers. But one thing was clear, we weren't going to give up. Not without a fight. "Stay close," he said, and we moved, slipping deeper into the shadows. We had no destination, no plan. But we had each other, and that was all we needed. As we moved farther into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the chase was far from over. The footsteps were still out there. And they were getting closer. We kept moving through the narrow streets, our footsteps muffled by the damp ground beneath us. Jack led the way with a steady pace, his eyes constantly scanning our surroundings, ever alert. I tried to match his speed, but my legs were aching, and my thoughts were racing. Who were these people chasing us? And why did they seem to know exactly where we were at all times? "Jack," I whispered, trying to catch up to him. "Who are they? What do they want from us?" He didn't answer immediately, his jaw clenched tight, his pace never faltering. I could see that the questions I was asking weren't ones he was ready to answer, but I needed to know. We couldn't keep running without understanding who we were up against. He slowed down just slightly, enough to glance back at me. His face was tight with something I couldn't quite read, guilt, fear, maybe both. But there was something else there too. Something darker. "You don't need to know," Jack said, his voice flat, as if he was trying to convince himself as much as me. Not yet. But. No, he cut me off, his tone sharper this time. You don't get it. If I tell you now, it won't matter. It'll only make things worse. You're safer not knowing. I wanted to argue, to demand that he tell me everything, but I knew better than to press him too hard. Jack had always been like this, shutting people out, keeping his past buried under layers of secrets. But now, in the middle of this chaos, I wasn't so sure that keeping secrets was going to save us. We passed by a row of abandoned buildings, their windows boarded up, the air heavy with the scent of decay. It was like walking through a ghost town, empty, eerie, and strangely silent. The further we went, the more the city seemed to close in on us, the towering buildings blocking out the sky, making it feel like we were being swallowed whole. I glanced back over my shoulder, half expecting to see those same shadows moving in the distance. But there was nothing. No sign of them. Yet, the silence was more terrifying than any pursuit could be. It was the calm before the storm. Jack finally stopped at an old, worn-out door, its edges chipped and weathered by time. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small, rusted key, and unlocked the door with a click. My heart raced, not knowing what we would find on the other side. He opened the door just enough to slip through, and I followed without hesitation. Inside was a small, dimly lit room, the air thick with the smell of dust and old wood. There were no windows, no doors, only a single table in the center of the room. And on that table, there was something I hadn't expected, something that made my stomach drop. A map. A map with red pins stuck into various locations, marking places I had never seen before. Places I didn't even recognize. But one thing was clear, it was a map of the city. Our city. And every pin was connected by a series of lines, like some sort of twisted network. What is this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper as I stepped closer to the table. Jack was already moving around the room, his eyes scanning the walls, the floor, as if expecting someone to jump out from the shadows. He didn't answer me right away, his mind clearly elsewhere, but I could see the tension in his posture. He was on edge, and the unease in the air was palpable. It's how they track us, Jack finally said, his voice low and strained. It's how they've been finding us. I felt a chill run down my spine. Who? Who's tracking us? Jack's expression hardened. The people who want me dead. They've been after me for years. And now they're after you, too. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had suspected it for a while, but hearing it out loud made it real. It wasn't just some random group. This was personal. They were hunting us because of Jack's past. And now I was tangled up in it. I looked at him, trying to make sense of everything. But why? What did you do? He turned to face me, his eyes dark and full of secrets. I can't tell you. Not yet. I shook my head, frustration bubbling up inside me. We don't have time for secrets anymore, Jack. These people are dangerous. We need to know what we're up against. He was silent for a long moment, his gaze lingering on the map. I could see the struggle in his eyes, the battle between telling me everything and protecting me from the truth. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. They want something from me. Something I can't give them. And they won't stop until they have it. I didn't have to ask what it was. I could tell from the way he said it that it was something he'd fought to keep hidden for a long time. I stepped closer to him, trying to reach him, to get him to understand that we were in this together. Jack, we need to face this. Together. You can't keep running forever. He looked at me, and for a brief moment, I saw the walls come down. But then they were back up again, stronger than before. I'm sorry. But you don't know what you're asking. I'm not the person you think I am. I took a step back, the the weight of his words settling in. I didn't know what Jack's past held, but one thing was certain, whatever it was big. And the people after us were only the beginning. "Get some rest," Jack said, his voice steady again, the coldness returning. "We're moving out first thing in the morning." I nodded, but my mind was racing. How much longer could we keep running? And what would happen when the truth finally came out? As I sat down in the corner of the room, trying to find a moment of peace, the sound of footsteps outside caught my attention again. I froze, my heart pounding. Were they back? Jack's eyes met mine, and in that instant, I realized, we were not alone anymore. The room was still. Too still. Every creak of the building seemed amplified in the silence, every breath I took echoed in my own head. Jack's gaze had hardened, his body tense as he stood by the door, listening intently for any sounds. His hand rested lightly on the doorframe, but I could see his fingers twitching, as if ready to react at a moment's notice. The footsteps outside had stopped, but something in the air felt wrong. It was as if the world had shifted, and everything that had felt safe just a few hours ago was now fractured beyond recognition. There was no turning back now. Whatever was about to happen, it was coming fast. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to break the silence, but I couldn't stay quiet any longer. Every muscle in my body was wound tight, and I could feel the weight of Jack's secret pressing down on me. Jack didn't respond at first. His eyes remained locked on the door, and I knew he was calculating every possible outcome in his head. He was always 2 steps ahead, but even he seemed uncertain now. "I don't know how much longer we can stay here," he said finally, his voice low and edged with an unfamiliar fear. "They know where we are. They're getting closer." "Who?" I pressed, moving closer to him, desperate for answers. "Who is getting closer? And what do they want from us?" He closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering the strength to tell me everything. I could see the weight of his past settling on his shoulders, the burden of keeping this secret from me for so long. But now, with danger so close, it was like there was no other choice. He had to tell me, whether he wanted to or not. "They're a group," he began, his voice trembling ever so slightly, "a powerful group. They have resources, influence, more than anyone could imagine. And they've been hunting me for years. But it's not just me they want. It's something I have. Something I can't give them." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it, Jack? What do you have?" He didn't answer right away, his eyes flicking to the map on the table behind me. His gaze hardened, as though he was facing a decision he'd been avoiding for far too long. "I can't tell you," he said finally. "If I do, they'll find you, too. It's too dangerous." I took a step toward him, my breath catching in my throat. "Jack, I need to know. If we're going to survive this, I need to understand what's going on. What's the thing they want?" The tension in the room was palpable, like we were on the edge of something that could change everything. Jack looked at me, his eyes full of a mixture of pain and resolve. "It's not just any object. It's something much more valuable. Something that could change the world." I took a deep breath, my mind racing. "You can't just leave me in the dark about this. We're in this together, Jack. You've always said we were partners. Partners don't keep secrets from each other." He shook his head, his face hardening. "Not like this. Not when your life is on the line." Before I could respond, there was a sudden knock at the door. My blood ran cold. Jack froze, his body rigid with tension. The knock was soft at first, then louder, more insistent. Whoever was out there knew we were in here. And they weren't going to stop until they had us. "Get down," Jack whispered urgently, pulling me behind the table. "Don't move." I didn't question him. I dropped to the ground as quietly as I could, my heart pounding in my chest. My eyes remained fixed on Jack, who was already moving toward the door, his hand hovering near the weapon hidden inside his jacket. The knocking continued, growing louder with each passing second. Whoever was out there wasn't leaving. And Jack's face had turned pale, his expression one of someone who had just realized the worst was yet to come. He took a deep breath, then, in one swift motion, he opened the door, his body positioned in front of it like a shield. I couldn't see who was standing outside, but I knew one thing for certain: their arrival was not a coincidence. "Jack," a cold voice said from the doorway. "We need to talk." I couldn't see the face of the person, but the tone of their voice sent chills down my spine. It was sharp, demanding, and full of authority. Whoever this was, they weren't here to negotiate. They were here for answers. And Jack had them. Whether he liked it or not. He didn't say anything at first, his eyes locked onto the person in the doorway. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. I could almost hear the wheels turning in Jack's head as he weighed his options. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady but with a hint of regret. "I told you, I don't have it." There was a pause, and then the voice spoke again, this time with a venomous edge. "You're lying, Jack. You know what we're talking about. And we both know you can't run forever." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Jack had lied to me. He had been lying to me for days. But it wasn't about me, it was about something much bigger. And whatever it was, it had put us both in danger. As the conversation continued, I could feel the walls closing in, the air growing heavier with each passing second. Whatever was about to happen, it was going to change everything. The room seemed to shrink around us, the air thick with tension. The voice from the doorway, cold and unforgiving, was all that filled the silence. Jack stood still, his posture rigid as he faced the stranger. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest as I tried to process everything that was happening. "Jack, you can't keep running," the voice continued. "We know you have it. You don't have to lie anymore." I felt a chill run through me. "What are you talking about?" I couldn't help but ask, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to remain calm. I wasn't just scared, I was terrified. Everything I thought I knew about Jack, everything I believed in, was falling apart right in front of me. The figure in the doorway stepped forward, their silhouette barely visible in the dim light. "Don't pretend you don't know," the voice said, growing more impatient. "You're in this as much as he is. You can't hide behind him anymore." I wanted to run, to escape from all of this. But something inside me refused to back down. I looked at Jack, searching his face for any sign of what was really happening. He wasn't the person I thought I knew. That much was clear now. But there was something deeper here, something I couldn't understand, and I needed to know what it was. Jack finally spoke, his voice steady but carrying a weight that made my stomach drop. "I didn't want you to get caught in this," he said, his gaze never leaving the person in the doorway. "I never wanted you to know. But they won't stop until they have it." The words hit me like a bombshell, leaving me reeling. "What is it, Jack?" I demanded. "What are they after? What's so important that they'd risk everything for it?" For the first time, Jack hesitated. His eyes flicked to me, guilt clouding his expression. He had been keeping so much from me, but now there was no escaping the truth. The truth was finally coming to light, and it wasn't anything I was ready to hear. "It's not something you can just hand over," Jack finally said, his voice low. "It's a key. A key to something bigger than you can imagine. Something that could change the world." I took a step back, my mind struggling to grasp what he was saying. A key? To what? And why had Jack been hiding this from me? Why had he dragged me into this web of lies and danger? The figure in the doorway laughed, a low, mocking sound that made my skin crawl. "He's right, you know. It's a key to power. The kind of power that people will kill for. The voice dropped, taking on a sinister tone. And Jack knows exactly where it is. My breath caught in my throat. Power. A key to power. This wasn't just about money or greed. This was something much darker, much more dangerous. And Jack was at the center of it all. You're going to help us, Jack, the stranger continued, stepping further into the room. You're going to give us what we want. And if you don't, well, we'll take it from you one way or another. My heart pounded in my chest as I looked from Jack to the stranger, fear twisting in my gut. This wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. And I had no idea how Jack would get us out of this. He was always the one with a plan, the one who could see things before they happened. But now? Now, it felt like he was out of options. Jack didn't say anything. He just stood there, his face pale, his eyes shadowed with regret. He was trapped, caught in a game that was much bigger than either of us. And the worst part? I was caught in it too. Whether I liked it or not, my life was tied to his, and there was no escaping that. Jack, please, I whispered, my voice barely audible. What is this? Why didn't you tell me? But Jack didn't answer. He just turned to face the stranger once more, his expression hardening as if steeling himself for what was to come. You want the key? Jack said, his voice quiet but filled with a quiet rage. You're going to have to take it from me. The stranger smiled. It was a chilling smile, one that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. That's exactly what we were hoping you'd say. Without warning, the stranger stepped forward, their movements quick and precise. Before either of us could react, they grabbed Jack by the collar, pulling him close. The tension in the room was unbearable as I stood frozen, not knowing what to do, what to say. This was it. Everything had come to this moment. I won't let you take him, I said suddenly, my voice trembling but determined. The words were out before I could stop them. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I couldn't just stand there and watch this happen. Not to Jack. Not after everything we'd been through. The stranger looked at me with a smirk, almost amused. You think you can stop this? You have no idea what you're up against. But I didn't care. The fear that had been gnawing at me for days, the fear of losing Jack, the fear of what would happen if I just stood by and did nothing, those fears all melted away in that moment. Whatever it took, I would fight. For Jack. For us. The room seemed to close in on us. The heavy breathing of the stranger echoed in the silence as they stood over Jack, their hands gripping his collar tightly. I could see the veins in Jack's neck bulging, his jaw clenched, but he didn't make a sound. It was like he was bracing himself for something worse. I could feel my hands trembling as I reached for something, anything, to defend myself, to defend Jack. But the truth was, I was powerless in this moment. The weight of what was happening crushed me. I could see it in Jack's eyes, regret. Fear. And guilt. He had known this was coming. All this time, he had been running from something far darker than either of us could have imagined. Let him go, I said, my voice shaking, but louder this time. The stranger glanced at me, almost dismissively. You think your words matter now, the stranger sneered, their grip tightening on Jack. You're in too deep, just like he is. This is bigger than you. You don't have a choice. The words stung, more than I cared to admit. They were right. We didn't have a choice. I had stepped into this world with Jack without even knowing what we were really up against. Now, it felt like there was no way out. I won't let you hurt him, I said, stepping forward despite the fear clawing at my insides. Whatever it is you want, you're not getting it. The stranger's cold laughter filled the room. You don't get it, do you? You're already part of this. And you're going to help us finish it. No one gets out of this. Not you, not him, not anyone. Jack's eyes flicked to me, a flicker of something, hope? Desperation, flashing before it was quickly replaced by that same guilt-ridden expression. "I'm sorry," Jack whispered, barely audible. My heart broke. He was sorry, but it was too late. It had always been too late. Whatever we had, whatever trust there was between us, it was shattering in that moment. I could feel it, deep in my chest, as if the weight of his apology was crushing me. The stranger seemed to sense my turmoil and leaned closer, their voice a venomous whisper. "You see, the real reason Jack is still alive is because of you. You're the key, the missing piece. Without you, none of this would be possible." I froze. My mind raced, trying to process the words. What did they mean? What was I to Jack, really? Why was I suddenly the key to all of this? The realization hit me like a ton of bricks, and I took a step back, almost stumbling. "No." I gasped. "I don't understand." The stranger smiled cruelly, as if they had been waiting for this exact moment. "Of course, you don't. Jack never told you, did he? He never told you that you've been part of the plan all along." I could feel the ground shifting beneath me. My breath caught in my throat. The weight of the stranger's words hung in the air, suffocating me. How could Jack have kept something like this from me? How could he have lied? The trust one had placed in him, the love, all of it now felt like a lie. Jack's head dropped, and for a moment, he was silent. My heart ached for him, for us, for everything we had lost. "I didn't want this for you," Jack said, his voice cracking. "I thought I could protect you. But now it's too late." "Too late?" I echoed, trying to steady myself. "Too late for what?" "For you to leave. For you to be safe." His voice was heavy with regret. "They won't stop until they have it. Until they have the key. And I can't protect you from them anymore." I felt like the room was spinning, my knees buckling beneath me. Everything was unraveling. The life I thought I knew was slipping through my fingers, and I couldn't stop it. I wanted to scream, to run, but there was nowhere to go. No way out. The stranger took another step closer to Jack, the smile still playing on their lips. "You're right, Jack. It's too late for her. She's already a part of this, just like you. And she'll do exactly what we need her to do." I turned to look at Jack one last time, my heart shattering into a million pieces. His face was pale, his eyes filled with regret, but there was nothing he could do now. Nothing either of us could do. "Don't do this," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Please. Jack, I can't." But Jack didn't speak. He just looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw the truth that he had never wanted me to know. The truth that he had been hiding from me all this time. The truth that would change everything. The key. I couldn't breathe. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of the impossible words that had just been spoken. The key. The stranger's words echoed in my mind like a cruel refrain. What did they mean by that? How was I involved in all of this? Jack was still silent, his face twisted in regret and pain, but I could see that he wasn't lying. This was real. Whatever key I was, it was something important. Something dangerous. And I had no idea what it was. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest, my body shaking. "Tell me what's going on, Jack. Please." My voice cracked, the desperation seeping through. I needed answers. I needed the truth. Jack's eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw something in them, something that made my stomach drop. Fear. He was terrified. Of me, of what he had done, of what was coming. I could feel his hesitation, his struggle. He didn't want to hurt me. He never wanted to bring me into this world. "I never wanted you to know," Jack said softly, his voice thick with emotion. I never wanted you to be involved. But it's too late now. You're already here. The stranger stepped forward, their presence suffocating, as if they could feel my confusion, my panic. You still don't understand, do you? It's not just Jack who's involved in this mess. It's you, too. Everything you've known, everything you've been, it's all part of the plan. Stop. I shouted, stepping forward, trying to block out the stranger's voice, but it was like a tidal wave crashing against me. I don't want any part of your plan. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. The stranger laughed, a sound so cold it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. You don't have a choice. You never did. Jack brought you into this world. And now, you'll help us finish what was started. My breath caught in my throat. Finish what? What had Jack started? Why was I the missing piece? The key that they kept talking about? Every question I had was met with more confusion and fear. Jack's eyes were filled with sorrow. I wanted to protect you. I thought I could keep you safe from all this. But I was wrong. This is bigger than both of us. The room felt smaller with every word, the air thick with tension. I couldn't escape the feeling that I had been walking into a trap from the very beginning. A trap that Jack had led me into, unknowingly or not. And now, it was too late to turn back. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and hurt. Why didn't you warn me? Jack's face twisted with regret. I wanted to. Every day, I wanted to tell you. But the closer you got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. They would have come for you. I couldn't let that happen. Who? I demanded, my voice rising. Who are they? Who's coming for me? The stranger leaned in, their voice soft but venomous. It doesn't matter who they are. What matters is that you are the key. You hold the power to everything that has been built. You're the last piece of the puzzle. And once we have you, nothing can stop us. I felt a cold chill run through me. The weight of their words pressed down on me like a 1,000-pound stone. This wasn't just about Jack anymore. This wasn't just about the danger I had been unknowingly walking into. This was about something much bigger. And I was at the center of it all. My mind raced. The key. The puzzle. What were they talking about? And how was I supposed to fit into all of this? Jack's voice broke through my thoughts, low and desperate. I never wanted this for you. But now it's your choice. You can help us, or you can die trying to run away. I stared at him, the pain in his eyes cutting deeper than I could have ever imagined. But the truth was, I couldn't trust him anymore. Not after everything that had happened. I didn't know who to trust, who had been lying, who had been manipulating me all along. I don't know who to believe, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I don't know what's real anymore. The stranger's lips curled into a cruel smile. It doesn't matter who you believe. The only thing that matters now is the choice you make. You're the key, and without you, everything falls apart. I turned away from them, my thoughts a jumbled mess. I wanted to run. I wanted to escape this nightmare. But deep down, I knew I couldn't. I was already too far gone. There was no way out of this now. I had been pulled into a game that I never agreed to play, and now, there was no way to win. Do you think you can outrun this? The stranger asked, their voice a harsh whisper. You think you can escape your fate? It's already been decided. I gritted my teeth, my fists clenched at my sides. I wasn't going to let them control me. Not anymore. I wasn't going to let them win. Let's see about that, I muttered under my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. But even as I said it, I knew, deep down, that there was no escaping what was coming. And whatever happened next, my life would never be the same again. I took a step back, my legs feeling weak beneath me. The room seemed to close in, the air thick and suffocating. The weight of the stranger's words clung to me, suffocating my thoughts. "The key," I whispered, trying to process what was happening. It felt like my entire life had been leading up to this moment, like everything had been part of some twisted plan that I couldn't escape from, no matter how hard I tried. Jack was standing there, watching me with those same eyes filled with sorrow. His gaze shifted from me to the stranger, and I saw a flicker of something, regret, guilt, maybe even fear, but it didn't matter now. Nothing mattered but the decision that lay before me. "You need to choose," the stranger said again, their voice cold and final, sending a shiver down my spine. "Help us, or die trying to run away." My heart pounded in my chest. My mind raced, the choices spinning around me like a whirlwind. How was I supposed to make a decision when I didn't even know what the consequences would be? How could I trust anyone in this room? Jack had lied to me. The stranger was a threat, a reminder that there were forces at play beyond my understanding. But even so, something stirred deep inside me, a feeling I couldn't ignore, a voice that told me there was something more to this. Something I needed to uncover. Maybe I was the key, but that didn't mean I had to play by their rules. Maybe, just maybe, I had the power to turn the tables. I locked eyes with Jack. "Why didn't you tell me all of this before? Why keep me in the dark?" "I had a right to know," I said, my voice shaking, but filled with determination. The anger I had been holding back for so long broke free, a tidal wave of emotions crashing over me. "I never wanted to hurt you," Jack replied quietly. His voice cracked with the weight of his own regrets. "But if I had told you, they would have come after you sooner. I wanted to protect you from all of this. I thought I could protect you." "Protect me?" I echoed, bitterness seeping into my words. "You didn't protect me, Jack. You pulled me deeper into this nightmare." He didn't respond. The silence between us grew heavy. The tension was unbearable. It was clear now, Jack had made a choice long ago, a choice that had led me down this path, and now I was left to face the consequences. But I wasn't ready to accept it. Not yet. I turned my gaze back to the stranger, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at my insides. "What do you want from me?" "Why me?" The stranger's smile widened, though it didn't reach their eyes. "You're the key to everything. You're the piece we've been searching for. With you, we can control it all. The power, the influence, the world itself. Everything will fall into place once we have you." I shook my head, my mind reeling. This was bigger than I had ever imagined. Control the world? Was that really what they were after? And why me? Why was I the one who held the key? "You're asking me to join you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "To help you take control of everything. But I don't even know who you are. What kind of person would I be if I helped you do that? You're talking about power, about manipulation. That's not who I am." The stranger's expression darkened. "You have no choice. You've been marked. You were always going to be part of this. It's your destiny." "Destiny," I scoffed, my heart thudding in my chest. "Don't give me that nonsense. I'm not a puppet, and I'm not going to let you control me. I'm not your key to anything." Jack stepped forward, his face a mixture of desperation and fear. "Please, listen to me. You don't understand. They won't stop. If you refuse them, if you try to run away, they'll come for you. They'll come for both of us." I froze, the gravity of his words sinking in. Who were they? And how far would they go to get what they wanted? My mind spun with the endless possibilities, the terrifying realization that there was nowhere to hide. But something deep inside me refused to back down. I wasn't going to let these people, whoever they were, control me. I wasn't going to be anyone's pawn. I won't help you, I said, my voice firm, though every part of me trembled with fear. I won't be part of your plan. The stranger's smile disappeared, replaced by a look of cold fury. You'll regret that decision. I didn't flinch. I stood my ground, even though my heart was racing. I knew I had made a choice, one that could change everything. But for the first time, I felt like I had control of my fate. I wasn't going to let fear dictate my actions. I wasn't going to let them turn me into something I wasn't. Jack reached out to me, his hand trembling as he tried to catch my attention. Please, don't do this. They'll destroy us both. But it was too late. I had made my decision. I was done running. Done hiding. And now, I would face whatever came next. The room felt like it was closing in on me. I had made my choice, and now I had to live with it. The stranger's gaze burned into me, his fury palpable, but I refused to look away. I wasn't going to let fear control me any longer. The silence between us stretched on, each second hanging heavy with the weight of our unspoken words. Jack's hand hovered in the air, his expression torn. I could see the pain in his eyes, the guilt that weighed him down. But this was my fight now, not his. I had to face whatever came next, even if it meant walking away from everything I thought I knew. You think you're safe, the stranger sneered, breaking the silence with a cruel laugh. You think your choice means anything? You're just a pawn in a game that's bigger than you. It always has been. My heart raced, but I stood tall, defiant. I'd rather be a pawn in my own game than yours. The stranger's smile faltered for a moment, and I could see the anger brewing beneath the surface. Very well. If that's how you want to play it, so be it. But you'll regret this decision. We'll be back. With a swift motion, the stranger turned and disappeared into the shadows, their presence vanishing as quickly as it had arrived. The tension in the room evaporated, leaving me standing there with nothing but the echoes of their words and the heaviness of what I had just set in motion. Jack didn't move. He was still staring at me, his eyes full of conflicting emotions. You shouldn't have done that, he said quietly, his voice thick with regret. You don't know what's coming. They'll never stop coming for you now. And they'll use me to get to you. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check. I'm not afraid anymore, I said, though the truth was, fear still gnawed at me. I've made my choice. And I'm not going back. Jack stepped closer, his hand reaching out to touch my shoulder. Please. I never wanted to put you in this position. I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was keeping you safe. But now, I can't protect you anymore. I turned to face him, my heart aching. You didn't protect me, Jack. You kept me in the dark. You kept me on the sidelines, and I'm done with that. There was a long pause, the silence between us thick with unspoken words. Then, finally, Jack nodded, a silent understanding passing between us. I can't change what I've done. All I can do now is try to help you fight back. But you have to promise me one thing. What? I asked, my voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Don't lose yourself, he said quietly. Don't let them turn you into something you're not. Don't let them break you. I nodded, my resolve strengthening. I won't. I'm done being a pawn. I'll fight for what's mine. I'll fight for my future. With that, Jack turned and walked towards the door, pausing just before he left. Be careful, he said, his voice heavy with concern. They're always watching. You won't be able to escape them forever. I watched him go, the sound of his footsteps fading into the distance. As the door clicked shut behind him, I felt a shift deep within me. I wasn't the same person I had been when this story began. I had made a choice, and now there was no turning back. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my own terms. The world outside was still uncertain, full of danger and mystery, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had the power to shape my own destiny. And I would do whatever it took to take control. I took a deep breath, the weight of the decision settling in. The unknown lay ahead, but for the first time, I felt ready. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was fighting. Fighting for myself, for my future, and for the chance to finally break free from the shadows of my past. And whatever came next, I would be ready. The silence that followed felt like a heavy curtain descending, leaving me in the quiet aftermath of my decisions. I had faced the unknown, made my choice, and now there was no turning back. But this wasn't the end. This was the beginning of something much larger, something I would control. No longer a passive observer, I had become an active participant in the battle for my own destiny. The world outside was full of uncertainties, but one thing was crystal clear: I was no longer afraid. They could try to break me, manipulate me, but they couldn't take away what I had just gained: control over my own future. As I turned to face the next chapter, I knew that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more battles, more tough choices, but I was ready. And if I had to stand alone, I would. The question now wasn't whether I would survive, but how I would rise. I would fight back. I would keep pushing forward, no matter what they threw my way. And when the dust settled, would stand victorious. Because no one could ever take away what I had finally found, my true power. If you've made it this far, you're just as invested in this journey as I am. But the story doesn't end here. What do you think will happen next? How would you have chosen? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters, and I want to hear your predictions. And don't forget to hit that like button if you're ready to face the unknown with me. Subscribe for more stories like this, stories that will push you to think, to feel, and to question everything you know. The adventure continues, and I'm glad to have you along for the ride. Stay tuned for more. Don't miss out.